Let's look at the 2019 exam paper. The question we're looking at is question number 3. This question is on classes and objects. 3.1, you are given some attributes which were already declared in the question, which was the player name, the weight of the player, and the player's score. Recall that when we write our attributes, we normally start the attribute with an F. So each time I refer to a variable that starts with an F, it means we're working with the attribute. This paper was very similar to the 2018 exam paper, question 3. So if you had found that paper to be easy, this one will also be quite straightforward for you. 3.1.1, you are required to write a constructor. The constructor will receive the player's name and weight as parameters. So it only needs to receive 2 values as parameters, assign these values to the respective attributes, and set the score attribute to 0. So here, this is the definition of all of the functions and procedures that we need to write. My focus will not be on the definitions. I'll look at the implementation. This definition is simply the first line within the implementation that we will be looking at. So we needed to write a constructor. You will remember that with the constructor, it is a create. So there it is, constructor create. And we needed to receive the player name and the weight of the player. And the weight of the player will be of type real. We receive these 2 values and we assign them to the attributes. And as the question required, the 3rd attribute is set to 0. Take note that when writing a constructor, it does not mean that every value, every attribute that we have has to be received as a parameter. We could receive some of the values that are going to be set to the attributes, and the others could be set to fixed values, as in this case. 3.1.2, an accessor method, get, that's the get score. Remember, accessor methods are your functions. So here, your get score, that's a function. It's getting the score, so it's returning an integer. And functions return using the reserved word result and the attribute F score. 3.1.3, write a method called update that will receive. Recall receive, that's a keyword. When you see the word receive, it means we are bringing in a parameter. So here we receive an integer value as a parameter and add the received value to the score. So we receive a score as a parameter. So that's the value I'm receiving. And I'm taking that score and I'm adding it to the current score. And to update it, I then stored back the answer that I get. The new answer that I get is stored back in the attribute F score. So each time a value is brought in, each time a value comes in with the score, that value is added to the attribute, and the attribute will increase each time by the score that we receive. 3.1.4, calculate BMI. Again, we're receiving, so that's a parameter. We receive the height of the player and calculate and return. That's a giveaway. The reserved word return, that means it is a function. So we need to use this formula to calculate the BMI of the person. So we're receiving the height, so that is received as a real. Remember, we're writing a function. We're calculating the BMI, and the BMI return type is a real. So how do we calculate the BMI? It's the height of the player squared It's the weight of the player divided by the square of the height, giving you the BMI. So we get the weight of the player, that's your attribute. You take the height that we received as a parameter. We're using the square function. If you chose not to use the square function, you could have then said height times height, which is equivalent to square height. We square the height, and then that answer is obtained, and because it's a function, our answer is assigned to result. 315, write code called eligible for selection, and there's some criteria that we use to determine whether the player is eligible for selection. It depends on their score. A score between or from 0 to 7 means low possibility, 8 to 14 medium, and over 14 points there's a high possibility of the player being selected. This method must return. That's another key word. You have to look out for these. Because it's return, it means you are writing a function. So let's look at that particular function. Here it is. It's a function eligible for selection, and the function is returning some message, low, medium, or high possibility. So we need to look at the score. If the score is less than equal to 7, result, that's how the function returns. It's returning the string that says low possibility. Else, if the score is less than or equal to 14, then it is medium possibility. Final else will mean it has to be above 14, therefore it is a high possibility. This is a nested if statement. If, else means that the minute one of the conditions holds true, you will go into that particular condition and that value will be returned and no further testing will take place. So if the first two of the conditions fail, it automatically comes into the second condition. Some students would write this using a double condition. If F score is greater than equal to 0 and F score F score greater than equal to 0 and F score less than equal to 7. You could do that, but it's not required. These two conditions, the way they're designed, will work quite efficiently. 316 requires a toString. Write a toString method to display the attributes of the player, and that is the format. You must remember that a toString needs to return a value. So when we write a toString, that is a function. It returns the string. Most classes, user-defined classes, they have a toString, and all toStrings are written as functions. So they return headings, they return the headings together with the attributes. Here a conversion is taking place, that's cut off together with the score. And they are all put together on different lines. The hash 13 means it is taking the cursor onto the next line before the next set of values is being printed. So that is the toString method, and the toString was required to be displayed in this format. Let's now look